Welcome to our next course section where we will learn about Java server pages and related client-side Jakarta Java Enterprise Edition version 8 technologies. In this tutorial, we will get our first look at Java server pages in Java Enterprise Edition version 8. We will go back to our first Maven archetype generated hello world example, and then we will add the necessary Maven dependencies to its POM file, and we will essentially change the hello world servlet to a hello world Java server page. And in this way, we will learn about the life cycle of JSPs and how we can debug them in the Eclipse IDE. These are the high-level steps. As we mentioned, we'll add the JSP dependencies to our Maven POM file. And then finally, we'll look at the JSP compile lifecycle. Now back in Eclipse and looking at our servlet, we see we used to generate our forms this way, and now we are going to move this type of output to JSP pages. So the first thing we do is we need to add the dependencies in our POM file, and that means adding the Servlet JSP API. It also means adding the Servlet JSP JSTL, which is the Java standard tag library API. And we will obviously keep our existing Servlet API. What we'll do is the previously generated HTML, we'll move it and package everything neatly into a JSP page. We see we specify the content type, the character set, and the language. And then we kind of embed some Java in here where we specify the default user, another section of embedded Java where we get the user parameter, and if it's not found, we just default it to guest user. And here is the hello associate, so it says enter your name, and all it does, it submits the form to itself, just a JSP page. It will display your name. So let's run this and test it. And we go directly to our greeting.jsp page. Here we see the hello guest. So we'll enter the name, submit, and we see that the hello prompt has changed. Back to Eclipse, and let's stop the server. We remove the module. We clean out our directory. And now in our JSP page, we add a breakpoint for debugging purposes. And we debug it on the server. Select next and finish. We see we hit our first breakpoint, which is the Java runtime version display. So we'll just resume, go back to our display, and display our greeting.jsp page. And here we are in our new breakpoint. And now we can step over our JSP line by line. And then resume running. And we see our page, submit, and we hit our breakpoint again. Now let's look at how and where our JSP is deployed. So we'll go to our Tomcat server, double click, open our launch configuration, and we look at our arguments, and we see the base directory is inside the metadata plugins directory. So let's open this directory in our Windows Explorer. And we see this is the deploy directory, config, log, web apps, work, and WT web apps. So let's go to WT web apps, and inside our JEE8 web app directory, here we see our deployed greeting.jsp opening with Notepad. It's essentially what we have in Eclipse. Let's go back down to our root temp1, and we open up the work directory and Catalina localhost web app org apache JSP, and here we see a greeting underscore JSP Java class, and if we edit it with Notepad, what we see is a servlet. And the interesting thing about this servlet, you'll see a bit of code that looks familiar to us. So this explains the process of JSPs that essentially gets compiled into actual servlet pages and then gets served up by a web server. And that's it for a deeper dive into Jakarta server pages. Have a look at the official documentation. And that concludes this tutorial. I will see you in the next one.